On today's episode of Impeachable, You Decide, we will be talking about the Trump transcript. When it comes to presidencies, there's always a clash of controversy that happens each term. It seems that all of these clashes can be summed up by the OG clash between the Democratic and Republican parties. One always attacks the other, while the attacked party defends their candidate to the death. Who could expect less from a presidency such as Trump's presidency? In fact, Trump's presidency might be the most controversial presidency America has ever had since the likes of Clinton or even Nixon. So, what's the recent debacle that everyone's feuding over now? Well, the Democratic Party are taking the steps to impeach President Trump. For what, you say? Well, that's why we're here today. We are going to debunk a transcript of a conversation between President Trump and Ukraine's recently elected President Vladimir Zelensky. Was this conversation a quid pro quo? Or was it a genuine conversation between two political leaders? This is why we'll be looking at the transcript today. Was this transcript between the two political leaders this? Or was it this? For most Democrats, they see this as a kind of shady, godfatherly-like ordeal, while the Republicans think that it was just a very innocent favor between two politicians that are trying to build each other up. At first glance, it seems like just another ploy that the Democratic Party was using in order to impeach President Trump. It seems like anything President Trump has done in the past has gotten ridiculed and torn apart. A rally for impeachment over a simple phone call seemed like another device that the Democratic Party was trying to use. However, with closer look at the transcript, we anthropologists are better able to put out that maybe these impeachers were onto something. In this report, we'll be just focusing on the supposable quid pro quo of the transcript and all surrounding information that is referred to in it. With the information at hand, it will be up to you to decide if Trump's actions really validate impeachment or if this was just another ploy of the Democratic Party to remove Trump from office. Before we get into discourse markers and the actual facts, let's check out what actually entails the grounds for impeachment of a president. According to the Constitution of the United States, Article 11, it says, the president, the vice president, the members of Supreme Court, the members of the constitutional commissions, and the ombudsman may be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of culpable violation of the Constitution, treason, bribery, graft and corruption, other high crimes, or betrayal of public trust. The big debacle here is if the conversation that President Trump and President Zelensky had was an act of bribery or not. Really, we do have to ask ourselves, what's going on here? What is going on in this transcript? Now that we have solidified the basis of the argument, let's head to the transcript. First, I will reveal the inconsistencies that a transcript like this can present. Therefore, it would make impeachment seem ungrounded. Then, with the language of the text itself, I will point out areas of concerns that could possibly imply a lawsuit for impeachment. But first, let us look at the big inconsistencies of this transcript. A big no-brainer shouldn't surprise you at the very beginning of the transcript. The date and the timestamp of the transcript says that a conversation between the two presidents happened at 9:03 to 9:33 a.m. on July 25th, 2019. That's a 30-minute conversation. However, the total transcript that, yes, you see that at the top, that Trump's own administration provided was only 4 pages long. When acted out, this conversation constituted a 6.5-minute conversation at most. Therefore, we can conclude that this thing is biased. We can conclude that a lot of information was cut out of this transcript by none other than Trump's administration, and this transcript is also not one of the best in showcasing how the conversation was carried out. For us linguistic anthropologists, I would say that the transcript is pretty dry. There are no intonation units, breath marks, or pause notations. So, how things were taken and the conversational dance between the two politicians cannot be conclusively determined. Therefore, the assumptions that one can make off this transcript alone can be skewed from these inconsistencies. With inconsistencies, though, now out of the way, let's get to the good stuff. The quid pro quo. So this is the big issue we have here. But before we get to this big issue in the transcript, I want to discuss kind of the dynamic and the kind of conversational dance that Zelensky and Trump are having. So the dynamic of this conversation is highlighted in blue if you want to see and zoom in there. But there's kind of a buttering up process that's happening between them. The first 2 pages of the transcript consist of a congratulatory talking and praising incidences of each other's presidencies and what they do in them. From a John Austin point of view, I have to ask, what is being performed here with this speech? Is this an asking? Is it a praising? Or is it a shakedown? Are we buttering up Zelensky so down the line I can ask him for something? If this is constituted as a speech act, would this constitute the act or the performative to be a bribery? I don't know. For those of you who don't know what a quid pro quo is, however, I did look it up. It is an agreement between two parties to do a favor for one party in return for something. So it's kind of like, I scratch your back if you'll scratch my back. A favor for a favor. Before the questionable quid pro quo statement, though, President Trump makes it known to Zelensky that the U.S. does a lot for the Ukraine, more than any other European country, and Germany does for them. He makes mention or reference to it at least 7 times before we get to the quid pro quo section of the transcript. This makes it seem that the president is revealing that the United States has already upheld their end of the bargain. Zelensky even thanks Trump for his support in defending their nation by supplying the Ukraine with weapons. Finally, on page 3 of the transcript, President Trump says to Zelensky, "I would like you to do us a favor, though, because our country has been through a lot and Ukraine knows a lot about it." There it is, guys. On the surface, this insertion seems tame. However, if we look at though in this sentence, it is a pragmatic discourse marker. So the word though. It indicates that there is something that is undesirable in this turn of talk than in the previous one. It changes the subject of talk. It seems like Trump is saying, yes, it was nice to talk about all of these formalities of thanking me for how I've helped you, but now on to the real talk, to the subject I want to talk about in this phone call. So, what does Trump want Zelensky to do? In the next line, he states, "I would like you to find out what happened with this whole situation with the Ukraine. They say a CrowdStrike. I guess you have one of your wealthy people. The server, they say, Ukraine has it. There are a lot of things that went on, the whole situation. I think you're surrounding yourself with some of the same people. I would like to have the Attorney General call you or your people, and I'd like to get to the bottom of it." So here's the favor. Trump wants Zelensky to look into CrowdStrike. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of all of this quid pro quo, let's get some background on CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike is a cybersecurity company in California that went public in 2016, doing work for the Democratic National Committee. In 2016, CrowdStrike was hacked and nearly 20,000 of the company's emails were posted online. After a month of investigation, CrowdStrike announced that the company was hacked by Russian operatives. Interestingly, a year after the CrowdStrike hack, President Trump mentioned CrowdStrike in an interview with the Oval Office on April 23, 2017. I found the transcript of this interview. The interviewer asked Trump about his thoughts on WikiLeaks' campaign for the leak of Hillary Clinton's emails. Remember, that was who he's running against. Who was? Yes, a Democrat. Trump discusses his opinion of the email leaks. If they had a proper defensive devices on their internet, equipment, they wouldn't even allow the FBI. How about this? They get hacked and the FBI goes to see them and they won't let the FBI see their server. But do you understand? Nobody ever writes it. Why wouldn't former Hillary Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta and Hillary Clinton allow the FBI to see the server? They brought in the company that I hear is Ukrainian based. The interview then asked, CrowdStrike? Trump replied with, "That's what I heard. I heard it's owned by a very rich Ukrainian. That's what I heard. But they brought in another company to investigate the server. Why didn't they allow the FBI to investigate the server?" There's a lot going on there in that CrowdStrike transcript. Here in this transcript, It seems that Trump is asking Zelensky to investigate CrowdStrike and the server. Therefore, Trump just wants to get to the bottom of this mess. Now, let's look at the language of the request. Back to the transcript. So when Trump says, "I would like you to do us a favor," there are two ways in which you could take apart this statement. You could see it as Trump asking for a favor in himself in order to prove himself innocent of any corruption in his election to office. But another way you could see us in this reference is to our country. It can imply that Trump is speaking collectively on behalf of the U.S. This would support his claim that his goal in investigating Biden's son, which is later mentioned in the rest of the transcript, if you want to go look at that, was motivated by his perception of the national interest. Either way you look at this can sway the type of stance you can take on the issue. Another interesting viewpoint that I want to point out is the use of ellipses in this part of the transcript. Usually the use of an ellipse in a transcript conveys that the speaker is trailing off. However, like I stated before, it seems like a lot has been cut out of the transcript since the length of the transcript will not support a 30-minute conversation. Therefore, this could be an instance in the transcript of one such time where pertinent information has been cut out. This could either build the argument for impeachment or be seen as a means of trailing off that Trump can do. We won't know. No one can know for sure, but it is truly up to the reader to formulate if this was truly a quid pro quo. Zelensky's response to Trump after this incident was cooperative in what Trump wanted him to do. So he promised Trump that he would look into this CrowdStrike investigation and really put all of his times and efforts into it. What were the motives for it? I don't know. Maybe to get weapons, maybe to have something from the U.S. in the future. We may never know. The statement can be taken one of two ways. Personally, I think that there is enough evidence to say that this was an impeachable offense. However, when a poll of general public reacted to the study of the transcript, most people stayed on the side of their political party. If they were a Democrat, they deemed that the transcript was a motive for impeachment, that they should impeach President Trump. If they were a Republican, they all thought that it was just a ploy that the Democrats were doing. However, I stand with the 65-year-old Republican man who was interviewed during this study. Although he was a Republican, after seeing the transcript study, he thought that it was an obvious impeachable offense. He goes on to say, "Even though I'm a Republican and I think it's going to be challenging because right now it's so partisan, I wish people would just look at it for if it was right or wrong, instead of automatically deciding based on their political affiliation. That just rankles me. I think that the rule of law is an important aspect of our judicial system, of our constitutional process, our belief in doing what's right. So that's another reason why I think he should be impeached. I don't want people around to the world to think that we are just as corrupt as any other nation, that we are just sweeping this under the rug because he is our president. We have a lot at stake if he is not impeached, because then we can't hold other people in our government or other countries accountable for their mistakes. This is a historical event. What happens now is going to impact the things that happen for decades. So, fellow citizens, you've heard it from me. Dare to be outside of your political party. Don't go with the flow. Get educated, read the transcript, read the studies that we have, as BYU students have done, and decide for yourself if this act is impeachable or not.